Relations Internationales, IFRI. We have the pleasure to be in conversation this morning with Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar, veteran diplomat, former head of Tata's Global Corporate Affairs, and now Minister of Foreign Affairs. Minister Shankar, I give you the floor because I presume you want to make some introductory remarks. Welcome, first and foremost.
Thank you. First of all, let me say that it's a great pleasure to be back at the Med Dialogue. I wish I was back there in person like last year, but I will settle for a virtual interaction this year. Hope by next year everything is back to normal. I was asked to make some opening remarks on rethinking migration. And it is a subject which is obviously one which is very central to India's engagement with the world. Now, we obviously live in the age of globalization, and interdependence and interpenetration are two processes which are central to globalization. And if you actually look at what is globalization, I think a lot of it is the indivisibility of our existence, and four of those expressions are in migration, in climate change, as we've seen now in pandemics, and in terrorism. These are all areas where national governments will try and shape outcomes, but international cooperation is absolutely critical. Now, we must recognize that the migration of workers and professionals is as central to globalization as the mobility of capital, goods, and services. In fact, as the knowledge economy gains ground, global availability of talent is going to become more salient. And clearly here, demographic factors also have a bearing because some societies have more talent because of their demography. So what I would really urge, this conference to do is really look at migration and mobility in a composite way and see it in a sense as a human expression of the transfer of technology, of the promotion of innovation, of the building of business, and of the sharing of knowledge. And facilitating that would actually be central to all our economic prospects. Now, we are coming through, I hope, through the COVID pandemic. And I think what we are all agreed on is that the world order would be very different. We're not sure what it will be, but we know it will be very different. But what I guess we can all more or less anticipate is that a post-COVID world order would put a greater premium on how we redefine national security. That national security will be much more about economic security, health security, in many countries, food security, energy security. And I would suggest to you that reliable human resources is intrinsic to creating more resilient supply chains. Now, if you look at the global talent pool, I think you will not disagree with me that India has a very special place in it. We actually provide human resources across the entire spectrum of economic activity. In the Gulf alone, we have today more than 9 million Indian workers. Overall, I think in the world, if you look at the non-resident Indians and persons of Indian origin, I think we'll be looking somewhere between about 30 to 34 million people. 1 million Indian students study abroad at any time. So, and these students really, and those who have moved on in the professional career will actually, influence areas like engineering, medicine, and R&D in a very, very fundamental way. And in fact, when it comes to students, I would suggest, in fact, they will be increasingly central to global education business. And you can see that already in the US and Canada and Australia, etc. Maybe even in UK. Now, when you think about this talent pool that I'm talking about, I mean, you can have, the CEOs of Google and Microsoft at one level, and you have people who keep our everyday life going at another. So in one way or the other, they've actually already started to affect the way the world works. Now, because migration and mobility is a fact of life, I think it's important to ensure that it is legal and it is safe. Migration we are talking about. That when it comes to mobility, that we encourage market-driven mobility, because that is essential finally for a globalized economy. And what we should guard against is illegal migration, because illegal migration is actually the feedstock of organized crime groups. Therefore, this whole subject has been something that we've discussed in bilateral and multilateral diplomacy. We are among the 164 countries of the UN who have signed the Global Compact on Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration in 2018. With the EU, we have a declaration of common agenda on migration and mobility that we agreed to in 2016. Through that, we set up actually an India-EU high-level dialogue on migration and mobility that meets regularly. We have concluded a migration mobility partnership agreement with France 2 years ago. We have agreed to it in principle with Portugal. We are working with Italy, with Germany, with the Benelux countries. So this is something which is actually a very active part of the India-EU conversation. Now, we've also taken similar steps with the Gulf countries. In fact, we have to ensure, because it's such a large volume of migrants that we have there, we actually have an electronic platform to register the migrants. We have created 24/7 helplines and resource centers for their safety and welfare. We have actually a sort of a grievances platform, which is called Madad, which is the Indian, it's an acronym, the word means help. And even the recruitment of people, providing them orientation skills, we have sort of digitized it, organized it in a way. Now, what this year in particular has taught us is that migration also comes with its own responsibilities. We all woke up when the COVID hit us to discover how many of our people were abroad, and obviously we were concerned for them. And I can share with you that where India was concerned, we helped more than 100,000 foreigners living in India to go back home. And we have brought back 2.8 million Indians. You know, there could be tourists, there could be shipping crews, there could be workers, there could be professionals back home to India. So my point to sum up is, when we are rethinking migration today, particularly in the COVID and the post-COVID world, we need to look at migration as something essential to globalization. It's going to happen. It's in our interest to make it happen safely, legally. It is central to more talent and innovation. It is, I think, very important to create greater business. And in some senses, I would say it also adds to a much more multicultural world. I believe that rethinking migration will in many ways define what would be a truly democratic and globalized existence. So those are some thoughts which I thought I would present before you, and I'd be open to talk about that or any other issue in today's world in which you may have an interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I have some worry that at the end of the pandemic, we couldn't find the same word we left before the pandemic, but we need to have a positive agenda. Last year, when we met in Flesh and Blood, we were talking about the traditional non-allied stand of India. We said many friends, few foes, no ally. Since then, China became much more assertive than 1 year ago. Perhaps that could mean that this time has come to find out some more formal allied, both in Asia and in the Mediterranean?
You know, first of all, I must tell you that line which you articulated, I incorporated in my book, which I was happy to tell you came out this autumn. I don't know if it's available in Europe, but I'd be very happy to send you a copy.
Thank you.
Because I think that interaction, what I did was I put in a lot of my interactions over the last 2 years into a book, which explores in India and, you know, the global order in different ways. So let's come to your question. Non-alignment and, you know, how do recent events affect it? Look, what is non-alignment? Non-alignment is actually was an approach that countries like India took in the 1950s and 60s onwards to maintain their independence at the height of the Cold War, when there was pressure on them from both blocs saying you must join us. Okay, so the end of the day, it is about maintaining your independence. Okay, but maintaining your independence has to go hand in hand with ensuring your national interest or national security. So when it comes to practicing, you know, that policy, in real life, you make adjustments depending on what are the challenges and what are the opportunities, where are the gains, where are the pressures. So it doesn't go necessarily in a linear way. Okay. Now, today, I think the era, I mean, in a sense, there's still a non-aligned group of countries. We meet every year. We met last year in Azerbaijan. So, more, you know, that sense of being more independent from bloc politics has grown because the Cold War ended. Now, today, for me, that fundamental approach to foreign policy continues. Now, I'll have to see how I deal with the challenges that I face, you know, what I face this year or what will come next year, or and see, you know, obviously one, how do I face up to it? But also I will see how I leverage the global environment to my advantage. But I do feel that given our history, you know, and I don't think it's only us, I think most countries who were colonized are very, very sensitive on the issue of their independence of, you know, of action and independence of thought. So to my mind, actually the era of alliances is diluting. You know, I'm not saying that alliances would go away. I mean, Italy is a member of an alliance. Europe is largely covered by an alliance. But I think what an alliance means, you know, how it plays out, I think all of that's going to change. Certainly the last 4 years of, you know, policies out of Washington is compelling a significant rethink as well. So you know, I think you kind of put your finger on something, but I would very respectfully suggest that the answer you posed is a outdated answer. I don't think that's the way to go. I think the way to go is to understand it's a multipolar world, leverage the multipolarity of the world, and then deal with the challenges of the day as effectively as you can.
Thank you. Françoise, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Minister. Well, let me ask you something, a very basic question related to very recent developments. Not surprisingly, I guess, I would like to ask you a question about the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, okay, RCEP for short. Well, India participated to the negotiations from day one, and it went through lengthy discussions, painful discussions, if I understand properly, during 7 years, and not at the last minute, but very late in the process, decided to pull out of the negotiations. And this RCEP has been signed recently, was signed on November 15th, without India in it. Well, being an economist by training, I would argue that it was most probably a missed opportunity for India, The reason why I'm saying that is that usually these preferential trading arrangements are about trade, of course, but they are also to a large extent about using external pressure to help push through domestic reforms. And so in the case of India, I would argue that it would have been an excellent opportunity to do such a thing. So my question to you, well, there are two questions actually. The first one is, why is it then that India pulled out of this agreement? What was the point? And isn't it a missed opportunity? And a secondary question, which is directly related to the EU, is it on the part of India a position of principle on preferential trading arrangements? Or would India be ready to engage in other preferential trading arrangements, in particular in a FTA with the EU? The negotiation has been ongoing for a long time. So should we drop any hope on the EU side about India joining or finally participating in this FTA or not? Thank you.
Let me answer your question backwards. Okay, start with the EU and then come to the RCEP. First of all, no, it is not a question of principle. India has nothing in principle against free trade agreements or preferential trade agreements. We have, in fact, a current interest with many partners. And specifically where the EU is concerned, you know, we were negotiating with the EU till 2013. Okay. Then in 2013, they could not close out the deal. Now, this was the tenure of the previous government, the end of the tenure of the previous government. So there was a change of government in 2014. The government of Prime Minister Modi offered to the EU that they would like to reopen or continue those negotiations. In fact, it was the EU which took the stance from 2014 saying, look, right now we have other priorities. I don't know if we are ready, you know. So for the last 6 years, and I say this as someone who sat in the room, heard my own leaders say this, heard the responses from the EU leadership. The reluctance to engage from 2014, this I can testify personally, is not from India's side, it is from EU's side, even today. Okay, and in the last 1 year, I have been to Brussels twice and brought up the subject with the commissioner mandated to deal with us. And that was pretty much the answer I got, which was that, you know, we need to think this through. We're not sure we want to do this at this time. So in fact, whether somebody has something against FTAs, you should ask the EU, you shouldn't be asking me. Okay, so that's my first part. Secondly, what was it, you know, where was the problem with the RCEP? Okay. Now, bear in mind, we do have existing FTAs with the ASEAN collectively, with many individual ASEAN members, with Japan, with Korea. So if you looked at the RCEP partners, we did not have with China, with Australia, and with New Zealand. Okay, so there will be the net additions in a way. Apart from which the quality difference between our existing RCAs and what the RCEP was also a fact. Okay. Now, I think when you said as an economist, you feel, well, it gives you access to larger markets. You should look actually at our trade record with the RCEP countries, all the RCEP countries, including China, for the last 15, 20 years. Our trade deficit has just gone up massively with them. Okay. Now, a lot of our negotiations were to address problems that we saw coming out of our experiences with these current FTAs, with the ASEAN, with Japan, with Korea, etc. You know, some of it related to market access, some of it related to the possibility of import surges, because again, you know, we were not assured of actually how the market economy exactly works in this zone. So we had a whole set of issues. Okay. Now we entered the negotiations and we stayed with it because we were very sincere in our desire to look at this opportunity. But finally, we had to make a judgment as a government whether we joined an arrangement where many of our basic concerns were not met. And you know, in any negotiation, not just an FTA negotiation, because you have entered a negotiation doesn't mean you have to agree to the conclusion even if it is not in your interest. Okay. So the idea that there would have been great benefits waiting for us at the end of the rainbow, I don't buy that. Okay. In fact, if you ask people in India, I don't know about economists, definitely in the real world of business, you go and ask people in the business world in India, so tell us what has been your experience with the some of these Asian FTAs. How has been your trading experience with the RCEP partners, all the RCEP partners? I don't think you'll get a very good feedback. The related issue here is also what you said, it will force reforms on you. Look, I think what in many ways my view has happened in the last 15 years, that cheap, often subsidized imports from countries who are not all market economies have actually delayed reforms in it, because people found, oh, I have a solution by importing it from outside. I have cheap components. Why should I make a component industry? Okay. So I would actually argue that entering into arrangements which, in a sense, do not work for you, where really true comparative advantages do not come into play, where there are a lot of non-market factors at play, I would argue that far from encouraging reform, they've had a very, very deleterious impact on our domestic economy. And I think the way to go, my government thinks the way to go, is actually today to consciously expand, enhance national capacities, to encourage more business, more innovation, more skill in India, provide a better infrastructure, provide a better enabling business environment, and then work with partners who are more complementary, who may not pose some of the challenges that we encountered, which I've spoken about.
Thank you, Minister. Some more, some less, every country is recalibrating its relation with the United States. Prime Minister Modi and President Trump were very, how could I say, very close. So for some extent, very similar. Modi's self-reliant nation, Atmani Barbarat, I beg your pardon for my very bad Hindi accent, reminds me America first at the end of the day.
No, I disagree with you. I disagree with you because one, Atmanirbhar Bharat is all about actually creating more capacities and more confidence and more creativity at home. We never say India first. We could have, we didn't. Okay. Because we want to send a message that more capacities at home are intended for more use abroad. We want to do more with the global economy. We don't want to do less with the global economy. So we are not asking our businesses. We have big investments in Europe. Okay. We're not telling them come back home. On the contrary. We send our talent abroad. We're not telling our talent, oh, don't go to those countries. Stay in India. So I think this analogy between Atmanirbhar Bharat and America first, I would dispute that. Okay. Number two, when it comes to the United States, look, today structurally in international relations, India and the United States have started developing more and more convergences. Why did it happen? It happened really because the Cold War ended. When the Cold War ended, a lot of what America had against India was no longer relevant. So if you actually start seeing the sort of the temperature graph of Indo-American relations, you can actually see from the 90s, gradually it goes up, and then it goes up higher and higher. And I would say, looking back, and as someone who's been involved with this relationship for now almost 40 years, in some ways, Clinton's visit to India in '99, most people agree, would be a turning point.
A great speech in the parliament.
Right.
I remember.
And then we had George W. Bush, who did something extraordinary for the relationship, which was the India-US nuclear deal. Then we had Barack Obama, and that relationship actually flowered as well. And Barack Obama was the first American president to be present at the Republic Day in India. And then we had Donald Trump, with whom we got along well. So look, it is a test of our, it's a testament to our diplomacy that you've had 4 administrations, and with each one of them, actually our relationship has grown. So you should be giving us a certificate. Now, my point is, the reason why that has happened is because there is a structural sort of convergence here. So I am very confident that India-US relations will continue to do well. I think there are larger forces, in a sense, which are supporting it. And and in diplomacy, in foreign policy, as you know, the more you do, the more possibilities open up. So it is an area which it's a relationship which really covers pretty much every domain of human activity. There's hardly anything which doesn't go on between India and the United States. So I am, hopeful that is how it will continue to go.
Thank you.